Barrow Hill is a unique railway heritage centre in the county of Derbyshire, around a 10 minutes drive over from Chesterfield and a 26 minutes drive down from Sheffield. It's unique in the sense that it features the UK's last surviving railway roundhouse, and reminds me of the Didcot Railway Centre, another place where visitors can walk into the main shed and right alongside the locomotives. The roundhouse was built by the Midland Railway in 1870, and remained in regular use right up until its closure in 1991. Fortunately, it was preserved and reopened as a heritage site in 1998. Going to Barrow Hill wasn't originally part of my plan, until I randomly decided to look into the current state of Midland Railway Compound 440 number 1000, and learned that she was now at the roundhouse. Besides Midland 1000, there are lots of different locomotives to see in the roundhouse and elsewhere on the site. In addition to the roundhouse itself, the Barrow Hill site also features a short demonstration line where public train rides are offered on selected days. On the day of my visit, the service was operated by a Class 02 working in a top and tail formation with the Class 03, with the passengers riding in a pair of British Rail Mark II coaches, specifically one of the earlier Mark IIA through Mark IIC variants, although the condition of these coaches left a lot to be desired. The demonstration line is very short, and it doesn't even take 3 minutes to cover in full, but it's better than nothing. One good aspect of this run is that you get to pass right alongside the yard, although most of what you could actually see were just Class 08 shunters. When I finally made it into the roundhouse itself, a turntable demonstration was still in session. We'll have a look at that later, but for now, I wanted to show you some of the locomotives that you can find in the roundhouse. First up is Class 81 number 81002, built in 1960 as one of the first electric locomotives for the West Coast Main Line. Also spotted in the roundhouse was another early WCML electric, namely Class 85 number 85006, of 1961. These two locomotives are the sole survivors of their respective classes, and on a brief personal note, I kind of have a soft spot for these early electric locomotives despite not knowing much about them. I've even got a model of a Class 85, which I acquired in May 2022. The next locomotive we'll take a look at might just be my favourite in the collection at Barrow Hill. This is 506 Butler Henderson, the sole survivor of the Great Central Railway 11F class. These engines were designed by John Robinson and built between 1919 and 1924, with the intention of using them on express passenger trains from London Marylebone to Sheffield. Curiously, only the first 11 members of this class were built in GCR days, with the remaining 24 built under the LNER and to a tighter loading gauge for service in Scotland. Butler Henderson had a long service life, lasting all the way through the LNER years and onto the British Railways era. She remained in service until 1960, by which time she had long since lost her top link assignments out of London. Although this locomotive has run under her own power and preservation, that was a long time ago now, and she's been a static exhibit for at least the past 25 years. Although I didn't get much footage of this thing, I must also shout out Class 23 number D5910 and the Baby Deltic Project. This group has taken a Class 37 and rebuilt her as a new member of the Class 23, of which no original members are left. Elsewhere on the site, one can find the Deltic Preservation Society and their workshop. This particular Deltic is 55009 Elysodon, and on the day of my visit, D9015 Tullia could also be seen parked outside. Although neither of these locomotives looked like they were in running order, it was still exciting to finally see any of the famous Class 55 Deltics in person. Another interesting find was 158A, the sole surviving example of the Midland Railway 156 class. This was a class of 240 tender engines designed by Matthew Kirtley, with 29 examples built between 1866 and 1874. 158A was built in 1866, and remained in service right up until 1947, ending her working days as a station pilot in Nottingham. She is now the oldest surviving Midland Railway locomotive, and I didn't know this when I was at Barrow Hill, but I have since found out that she is in the middle of a 3-year loan from the National Collection. Before watching the rest of the turntable demonstration, the last locomotive we'll look at is Class 02 number 02003, formerly D2853. 20 examples of this class were built by the Yorkshire Engine Company between 1960 and 1961, and they're notable for being the YEC's only production order from British Railways. I've always had a soft spot for the Class 02s, although I'm not sure what it is that I like about this design. In any case, they remind me of Owen from the Dark Railway series, which is fitting because 02003 was parked right next to a Hawthorne Leslie 040 saddle tank, the class that Theo and Otto are based on. And now we turn our attention to the turntable demonstration, which involved a little diesel shunter about which I initially knew nothing. If my research is correct, this little shunter is 2589 Harry, built in 1957 by Robert Stevenson and Hawthorne to a design by the Drury Car Company. He originally worked at the Dover Gas Works down in Kent, but was later sold to the Purfleet Deep Wharf and Storage Company, before eventually ending up in preservation here at Barrow Hill.
That's why we do the turntable.
This concludes my look at the Barrow Hill Roundhouse Museum. I was left feeling impressed by the overall experience, especially for the variety of locomotives in the collection, not to mention actually being able to go inside the roundhouse is anything to go by. Although those Mark II coaches I rode on earlier could certainly do with a bit of TLC. In any case, I can confidently recommend visiting Barrow Hill for yourself if you're ever in this part of England, and for now, I'll leave you with some bonus footage of an unusual Class 399 tram train in Sheffield, recorded soon after I left the roundhouse.